We're discussing sending some FA-18 planes, 41 of them, to Ukraine because we have decommissioned them. They're sitting in a warehouse out near Newcastle. We've got no further use for them, and the US has suggested that perhaps we could ship them over to Ukraine to help them in their war, of course, against Russia. It comes on the back of further news today that we are in extended discussions to send Hawkeye armoured vehicles also over to Ukraine, and these Hawkeye armoured vehicles are 7 tonnes. They use the same defence systems that are used to protect the White House. These 41 planes, if we don't send them over there, and this is a war we should note that we are already involved in. We've already sent 90-odd Bushmasters over to Ukraine. We have sent plenty of money to Ukraine, and we've given lots of other support. This is a war we've already got ourselves in. There are 41 fighter jets that we have no further use for, so we could either let them sit in a shed and rot, or we could give them to a nation that is in a war with a country that, if it had its way, would probably join up with China and come and take the rest of us. It seems like a no-brainer to me. We're not going to use them. The US has intellectual property rights over these planes, so they get the ultimate call over whether or not we send them over there. They're open to it. Discussions have begun. Just send them. They're no use to us.
If you're into recycling, this is a good use
Brilliant idea.
of military equipment. You know, when we had F-111s, they were buried as landfill just outside of Ipswich. Here, as Caleb, you said, we've got 41 jets. They could be ready in 4 months to go. They've not been used on aircraft carriers, so they're not banged up. They haven't been exposed to salt in the sea. And we can send them to someone who needs them at very little cost to taxpayers. As you said, we're already involved in the war. It's a no-brainer, Liz.
Well, we shouldn't be involved in the war, period. This is NATO's war. NATO started it. They poked the bear, they pulled the lever, they knew exactly what Russia would do in response. They did it anyway. Let the US bankrupt itself, as it's very effectively done, funding this war, because we all know it's its own motives, own reasons for doing what it's doing. Meanwhile, the West is awash with propaganda that the reason why we must win this war is because then Germany, we'll turn around and do a Germany and be like, well, now let's make the rest of the world. We got Ukraine. Let's make the rest of the world Russia as well. No. Putin has always said he wanted to restore the boundary of the original USSR, and that's why NATO knew what they were doing. The point of the matter is Australia is not a member state of NATO. Neither should we be. And as Greg Sheridan wrote brilliantly in The Australian today, our entire lifetimes, our Australian military has never gone and fought proper wars. What it does is behave as the US's sidekick. Why are we in Afghanistan? Oh, because the Americans are in Afghanistan. Why are the Americans in Afghanistan? Oh, protecting its own interests and benefiting greatly. I think a lot of everyday people on the street who haven't just completely drunk the very simple Kool-Aid of Russia bad, everyone must up arms. For goodness sake, before people started waving around the Ukrainian flag, we all knew it was one of the most corrupt countries on the face of God's green earth, especially the government. No, I'm not saying that it isn't, but to suddenly have the entire world, which is what the propaganda of the day would have us believe, turn against Russia, everything, we must save Ukraine, sending so much money and weaponry and all the rest of it. This is not our war.
As you said, Vladimir Putin already had designs on what he would call Greater Russia. NATO didn't poke the bear. They simply invited Ukraine to join democratic countries.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
Are you saying Ukrainian sovereignty should be held hostage to Vladimir Putin, that they don't have the right to choose who they want to form alliances with, and they should just be at the beck and call of Putin?
Good sir, you sound very naive about NATO's history. Since 1989, they've been the original bad guys, but you think that we should trust them in this instance?
When you say Australia has no interest at all, Australia as a free country and a democratic country has the responsibility to uphold democracy around the world. Correct. Because we may well
Then why don't they do this every time a small country is picked on? Because we don't.
because we may well find that democracy is under threat in this part of the world, and at that stage, we'll be helping people 13,000 kilometres from us.
It's not democracy that's under threat. It is America's very deeply vested interests in Ukraine. Anyway, agree to disagree on that one.